the billionaire who laughed at miracles. Then found one. James Carter was a man who seemed to have everything. At 42, he was a billionaire, a legend in the world of finance, and a master of control. His life was a perfectly tuned machine, every detail planned with precision. His mind worked like a supercomputer, analyzing data, spotting patterns, and predicting market trends with uncanny accuracy. To James, the world was a puzzle, and he held all the pieces. He didn't believe in luck, chance, or anything he couldn't measure. Success, to him, was the result of strategy, discipline, and a relentless drive to eliminate uncertainty. His office in New York City was a fortress of glass and steel, perched high above the bustling streets. Inside, screens glowed with stock prices, charts, and endless streams of data. James spent hours there, tweaking his investment strategies, refining his predictions. His meals were calculated to the gram for optimal health, his workouts timed to the second for maximum efficiency. Even his relationships were carefully curated. Business associates, not friends. Emotions, love, and human connection were messy variables that didn't fit into his equations. So he kept them at arm's length. People in the finance world called him the market magician. He could predict market shifts with a precision that seemed almost supernatural. His wealth wasn't built on guesses but on a deep understanding of patterns others couldn't see. He'd turned his company, Carter Analytics, into an empire, revered and feared by competitors. But beneath the success, there was a void. James had no close friends, no family to share his victories with. His life was a masterpiece of order, but it was cold, sterile, and empty of warmth. One crisp autumn evening, after a long day of fine-tuning his latest investment model, James slid into the back of his sleek black Tesla. The drive home was exactly 25 minutes, a route he knew like the back of his hand. He didn't need to glance at the clock. Every turn, every traffic light, was etched into his mind. As he settled into the plush leather seat, his phone buzzed with a message from his team. A sudden dip in the European markets had sparked concern. To James, it was just another opportunity, another chance to outsmart the system. He scanned the numbers, his mind already calculating potential moves. He didn't notice the delivery truck barreling through the red light. His driver, Michael, swerved hard, but the laws of physics were unforgiving. The world spun violently. James felt a jolt, then a strange weightlessness, then nothing at all. When he opened his eyes, he was in a hospital room. The air was thick with the sharp smell of antiseptic, and the steady beep of machines filled the silence. His body felt wrong, heavy, like it belonged to someone else. He tried to move his legs, but they wouldn't respond. Panic surged through him, sharp and unfamiliar. Dr. Emily Harris stood at the foot of his bed, her face calm but serious. "Mr. Carter," she said softly, "the accident caused severe damage to your spinal cord. The injury is permanent. You won't walk again." The words landed like a sledgehammer. James's mind raced, searching for a way out. He could hire the best specialists, fund cutting-edge research, find a solution. There was always a solution. "That's not possible," he said, his voice sharp. "I'll find someone who can fix this. There's got to be a treatment, a surgery, something." Dr. Harris shook her head, her eyes full of compassion. "This isn't something you can solve with money or logic, Mr. Carter. Sometimes, the only way forward is to accept what's happened." Accept? The word was like a knife in his chest. James had never accepted defeat. Every obstacle was just a problem waiting for the right strategy. But now, lying in that sterile hospital bed, he felt something he'd never felt before: helplessness. His world of control had crumbled, and he didn't know how to exist without it. Weeks passed, but the hospital room remained his prison. James's mind worked overtime, chasing solutions. He contacted every top neurologist, every spinal injury expert, spending millions on consultations, but they all said the same thing: accept it. The word haunted him, echoing in his dreams. He couldn't accept it. He wouldn't. His life was built on control, and he refused to let it slip away. One quiet afternoon, a boy walked into his room. He was about 15, with messy brown hair and eyes that seemed to see right through James. "I'm Lucas," he said, dropping into a chair without invitation. "You look like you're still trying to solve this with your spreadsheets." James frowned, irritation flaring. "Who are you? What do you want?" Lucas leaned forward, unfazed by James's tone. I know someone who can help you. Not with fancy machines or surgeries. Something different. James scoffed, his patience thin. I've seen every expert there is. What could you possibly know? Lucas's gaze didn't waver. It's not about science, Mr. Carter. It's about something bigger. Something you can't measure with numbers. James laughed, but it was a hollow, bitter sound. You're talking nonsense. Get out. But Lucas didn't move. Come with me to the healing garden. Just one visit. If it's a waste of time, I'll leave you alone. Deal? There was something about the boy's quiet confidence that made James pause. He was tired of dead ends. Tired of fighting a battle he couldn't win. Maybe this was worth a shot. If only to prove it was pointless. Fine, he said, his voice low, but if this is a scam, you'll regret it. The next morning, James's nurse, Clara, drove him across the city. They left behind the gleaming skyscrapers and entered a part of town James had never noticed before. Old brick buildings lined the streets, their faded facades housing small shops and bustling markets. The air was alive with the sounds of laughter, music, and life, things James had always tuned out. They pulled up to a hidden courtyard, and Clara wheeled him inside. The healing garden was nothing like he'd expected. It wasn't a hospital or a clinic. It was a vibrant, chaotic explosion of life. Flowers bloomed in every color imaginable, their sweet scent mingling with the earthy smell of soil. Birds chirped overhead, and the sound of distant laughter floated through the air. People in wheelchairs moved through the garden, some talking, some smiling, some wiping away tears, but they all shared something in their eyes: hope. Lucas appeared beside him, his voice soft. This is the healing garden. It's not about fixing your body, Mr. Carter. It's about healing your heart. James rolled his eyes, his skepticism intact. I don't need my heart healed. I need to walk again. Lucas just smiled. Maybe you need both. They wheeled James into a small building at the garden center. The room was warm, bathed in soft sunlight that streamed through wide windows. Wooden furniture and potted plants gave it a cozy, lived-in feel. At the far end stood a man in simple clothes, no robes, no mystical trappings, just a regular guy with kind eyes and a quiet strength that seemed to fill the space. I'm Daniel, the man said, his voice calm but commanding. I'm the healer here. I can't promise you'll walk again, James, but I can promise you a chance to find yourself. James bristled, his defenses rising. Find myself? I'm not lost. I'm paralyzed. You don't know what it's like to be stuck in this chair. Daniel's gaze remained steady. You're right. I don't know that, but I know what it's like to be trapped in your own head, ruled by fear and control. That's why you're here. Daniel stepped closer and placed a hand on James's shoulder. At first, James felt nothing. Then, a warmth spread through him, not in his body, but somewhere deeper, like a spark igniting in a long-forgotten corner of his soul. It was as if a door had opened inside him, letting in light he hadn't known he needed. For the first time since the accident, he didn't feel alone. Over the next few weeks, James returned to the healing garden every day. At first, he went to prove it was a waste of time. He wasn't some spiritual seeker. He was a man of logic, of facts. But something kept drawing him back. Daniel's sessions weren't about medicine or physical therapy. They were about talking, really talking. About James's childhood, growing up with a distant father who demanded perfection. About the pressure to succeed, to be the best, to never show weakness. About the walls he'd built to protect himself from pain, and how those walls had kept out love, friendship, and joy. Each conversation was like a chisel, slowly chipping away at the fortress James had built around his heart. He started to notice things he'd ignored for years, the way the flowers in the garden glowed in the morning light, the sound of Clara's gentle humming as she drove him home, the warmth of the sun on his face. One day, as he sat quietly in the garden, he felt a twitch in his leg. It was small, barely noticeable, but to James, it was a miracle. He stared at his leg, his heart pounding. For the first time, he dared to hope. In the garden, James met others who were on their own journeys. There was Lily, a young woman in her 20s who'd been injured in a car accident. She had a quiet strength that drew James in, like a magnet. One morning, he saw her sketching the garden, her hands steady despite her injury. He wheeled over, curious. You're good at that, he said, nodding at her drawing of a vibrant flower bed. Lily looked up, her eyes warm and bright. Thanks, I've only been here a month. But this place, it changes you. James hesitated, then asked, "How? I still don't get it." She smiled, her voice soft but sure. "You don't have to get it. You just have to feel it. Let go of needing all the answers." Her words hit him like a wave. For so long, he believed control was the key to everything. Every problem had a solution. Every outcome could be predicted. But here, in this messy, beautiful garden, he was starting to see that letting go might be the real answer. Maybe healing wasn't about fixing what was broken. Maybe it was about embracing what was. One morning, as Clara wheeled him into the garden, James felt something new stirring inside him, hope. It wasn't just about his body. It was about his heart, his mind, his entire being. He wasn't just healing, he was becoming someone new. Someone who could feel, who could connect, who could live. Months passed, and James's life began to transform in ways he never could have imagined. His legs still didn't work, but he felt more alive than he ever had in his days of wealth and power. He started reaching out to his old colleagues, not to talk about business, but to share his story. He told them about the healing garden, about how it had shown him that success wasn't about money or control, it was about connection, vulnerability, and growth. To his surprise, they listened. Some even came to the garden themselves, curious about the man James had become. Inspired by his journey, James used his wealth to open new healing centers across the country. They weren't just for physical recovery. They were places where people could rediscover themselves, where they could find hope, community, and a sense of purpose. The centers grew, and so did their impact. People came from all over, drawn by stories of transformation. The healing garden had planted a seed in James's heart, and now he was planting that seed in the hearts of others. One sunny afternoon, Lucas visited the garden again. He looked at James, his eyes sparkling with pride. "You're different now," he said, a grin spreading across his face. "I knew you'd find it." James smiled, his heart full. "I don't know if I believe in miracles," he said quietly, "but I believe in this." The healing garden had changed him, and now he was changing the world. His story wasn't just about one man's recovery. It was about the power of letting go, of embracing the unknown, and of finding strength in the things that truly matter: love, hope, and the courage to be human. James Carter, the man who once controlled everything, had learned that true freedom came from surrendering to life's unpredictability. And in that surrender, he had found a purpose greater than he ever could have imagined.